Welcome to another edition of Hey DT. Hey DT is a series of videos I do where I respond to viewer questions and comments. These viewer questions and comments, they typically come from the comments on the videos posted on YouTube and on Odyssey. Sometimes these questions come through social media such as Reddit or Mastodon. Sometimes they come through email. The very first question I want to respond to you is one I have gotten hundreds of times over the last several months, and I've answered it before, but I really wanted to address it today on camera as the very first question on a Hey DT. Hey DT, why not have a look at Nobara? So I haven't taken a look at Nobara Linux on camera, and the reason is that particular Linux distribution, Nobara, it's a Fedora-based Linux distribution designed specifically for gaming. That's what its claim to fame is. It's for people that want the best performance in terms of gaming. I am not a gamer. I have a Steam account. I don't own any like AAA games. I'm not buying games just to take a look at a Linux distribution. I'd have to buy some games. I'd have to benchmark games. I don't even know much about benchmarking games. Again, I'm not a gamer. It's just not something I can do. You know, I couldn't do it properly anyway. So why would I? It's just not me. If you guys want somebody to take a look at Nobara, it should be somebody that actually is a serious gamer, right? DT is not a gamer. Repeat after me. DT, he's not bald. He's also not a gamer. Moving on to the next question, I got a bunch of people responding to my recent video on how to replace sudo with doas on Arch Linux, and they all are in the similar vein here is, hey DT, you showed us how to swap out sudo with doas, but you didn't tell us why we should do this. Okay, well, I didn't tell you why you should do it is because I don't necessarily think you should do it. I just showed you an alternative program, right? Doas is an alternative to sudo. Sudo is an alternative to doas, and there's other alternatives to both of them. Why you want to use one or the other, I don't know. Why should you use the Brave browser rather than the Chromium browser, rather than Qt browser, rather than LibreWolf? I don't care. I don't care what you use as far as a browser. I don't care what you use as far as, you know, a program to elevate your privileges, as far as your user privileges. If you want to use systemd's run 0, if you can make that work somehow, you know, do whatever, right? I'm not here to convince you to use any of the software I show on camera. But why would some people probably prefer doas rather than sudo? It's because doas is a much smaller, lighter weight program. If you care about that thing, in terms of security, the smaller the program, the less of an attack vector there is. Now, for me, that's less of a concern for me. One of the things I love about doas is the fact that it is so dead simple to configure. The config file for doas you saw on camera, I did my doas config. It's one line, right? The sudoers file, though, you know, the sudo config is it's a weird config that's got a lot of stuff in it, a lot of lines that are commented out, and you got to uncomment things. It's kind of a rough thing to play with if you don't know your way around Linux already. Like for a brand new user coming to Linux for the very first time, I think they would have a much easier time playing with doas rather than sudo. Moving on to the next question. Hey DT, am I you or are you me? Now, this is one of these people, he's trying to be cute here. He's trying to be funny, or maybe he just smoked a lot of weed when he wrote that comment. But you know what? I'm actually going to take his question seriously because there is something to this. Am I you or are you me? Well, are you you, right? Am I actually me, right? There is something to be said that all of us in some ways are fake. All of our personality, everything that we interact with as far as other human beings, you're fake, I'm fake. It's all this invented personality. It's all the ego. There is no essential self. You know, when I'm talking to you guys on camera, this is not the real DT. This is the DT for me on camera. There is an essential DT somewhere in there, but he only really comes out when he's not concerned about interacting with the public. And typically those kinds of, when you get down to the real person, typically you only see that real person in periods of extreme stress and calamity, serious illness, major disasters. You know, that's when the real person all of a sudden comes forth, right? You forget worrying about the fake person, right? And that's when the real you actually shows up. In the early 20th century, there was this man named George Gurdjieff, who was a spiritual teacher, kind of a philosopher, and he preached that everyone is nothing but all of these false personalities within us. We all have multiple false eyes, our egos, right? And depending on where we're at, depending on our mood, depending on what kind of setting we're in, various of these false personalities come forth at a time, and it's very difficult to ever find that real essential self. And George Gurdjieff, he developed this system, this basically spiritual system called the Fourth Way, that was designed to train yourself to recognize when you're being this false person, when the false personality, when the ego is driving you. Recognize it, observe it, and the more you observe it, the less the ego is in control, and the more your essential self comes out. This system was called the Fourth Way. One of my favorite lines from George Gurdjieff famously is, he said, "Life is real only when I am." So when you ask the question, am I you or are you me? I would say, are you you? Am I me? The next question comes from some of the videos I did recently about DTOS, which is the Arch Linux-based Linux distribution that I've been working on. And this person writes, "Hey, DT, have you considered hooking into the tail end of archinstall and applying all of your non-installation configurations at the end? Leveraging a standard installation mechanism that isn't graphical has its advantages. Obviously, it's your show, but I was curious." So a lot of people have asked this. For DTOS, I wrote my own installation program. So it's basically just a command line installation program, but I wrote a script to kind of automate the process rather than using the built-in Arch install script. Why did I do that? It's because I thought the Arch install script is just too big of a program. It's too massive. It's trying to be all things to all people, all configuration possibilities and everything, and it's kind of flaky. If you've ever used the Arch install script, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't want to be tied to that thing. I'd rather do what I want to do. I'd rather write my own installation program, one that I have total control of. That way, again, it's just my project. Again, this guy writes, "Hey, it's your show." He's right. It's my show. That's why I went that route. I don't want to be beholden on somebody else's installation program, and that's why I didn't use Calamares. That's why I'm not using a graphical installation program like Calamares, because it has its own set of problems I don't want to deal with. The Arch install script has its own set of problems I don't want to deal with. So I would rather just create my own. It's tailored exactly to what I need. It has exactly what I want as far as an installation program and nothing else. Next question. "Hey DT, I'm very glad to hear your plan to create a video man pages project. I've been hoping for a long time that a widely respected content creator would offer something like that, and you seem to be the first to answer the call." So this is a statement I made on a live stream a while back. When I was creating DTOS, I want it to be an educational project as well. And one of the things I wanted to do was, documentation. I thought a great thing to do for documentation wouldn't be just text like articles and wikis and man pages. How about videos? I'm a video content creator. I have thousands of videos already about Linux, but I thought about specifically making a video project, a video man page project, where I do these very brief, just a few minutes in length overview of various Linux commands, shell commands, like your core util kind of commands, where I show you the basic usage of, for example, the ls command, the cp command, the mv command, whatever it happens to be. And that way, it's less of kind of dry, boring instruction manual kind of content where you go read, hey, you just watch this, 2-3 minute video about ls. Ls is a perfect example. It's not a lot you can do with it. It doesn't have a ton of flags and options. I could easily do a video, like a 2 to 3 minute video showing you, 10 or 12 very common ways that people use the ls command, again, on a video format. And I think that is something I'm still interested in doing. I haven't started it yet. And with any project, the most important stage of the project is just getting started, right? I know it's going to be a massive undertaking, and at some point I just have to get off my lazy ass and start it. And I'm going to start that at some point within the coming weeks. Next up, another question I've gotten several times in the last few weeks about DTOS. "Hey DT, absolutely love this. Would be great if you also add an option for Artix Linux repos to turn DTOS into an artix-based Linux distribution. I've been daily driving Artix for a long while now, and it feels harder to use plain Arch now that I've gotten used to Artix. If that could be done, I can't wait to try it." So I've had a lot of people ask me, hey, can you build DTOS? Can you scratch DTOS based on Arch and make a new DTOS, base it on Debian or Ubuntu or Fedora or Nix, whatever distro. And no, I build everything for Arch, right? This has been a work in progress for years. I've been working on DTOS for years. It's had lots of iterations. Started as an Arch Linux post-install script. Then it was a graphical installation program with a Calamares installer, a proper ISO, and now it's a proper ISO with a command line installation, a custom installation program that I'm writing. And it's all based on Arch packaging. I have my own repos. I build packages for DTOS, right? And they're Arch packages, right? I would literally have to scrap everything I've ever done on DTOS and start all over just to base it on a new distribution. I'm not going to do that. I mean, you're talking years of work, again, thousands of hours just to move from one distribution to another. And what's the point, right? I'm not doing that. If you want to fork DTOS and go in a different direction with it, hey, you go build a Debian-based or a NixOS-based distribution on DTOS, have at it. I don't care. I'm not going to do that. I'm already building stuff for Arch. All the scripts I've written, there's a ton of scripts that help automate, package building and building the ISO and everything. It's all built and designed for a Arch Linux system. An Arch Linux system, by the way, that uses systemd as its init system. I'd have to rewrite all of that to move to Artix, right? It would cause me some headaches, not as many as like non-Arch-based distributions, like moving to Debian. I couldn't reuse anything. I'd literally have to start from scratch. Artix, I could reuse some things, but it would still be a nightmare. And for what purpose? To be on a distro that doesn't have systemd? I don't care about systemd. I don't care about the init system. I don't care if something uses systemd or doesn't use systemd, uses OpenRC or sysv init. I don't care. I get that you people care, right? If you care, again, fork it and do your own thing. I don't care because I don't care. I'm never going to do this work that, in my opinion, is totally pointless work. And finally, I'm going to cover a lot of questions. I got a ton of questions about a recent video I did a couple weeks back about doom scrolling and the dangers of doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is when you're sitting there consuming all of this negative, angry, hateful filled content on the internet, specifically social media. Doom scrolling is when you're scrolling through posts really fast, TikTok videos, YouTube shorts, whatever it happens to be, anything social media related, just so you can get to the next negative thing and the next negative news story, next video, whatever it happens to be. That is doom scrolling, and it has serious negative health effects, mental health effects. It makes you nervous and anxious. It makes you fearful. It basically it turns you into just a horrible, horrible person. And doom scrolling is like medical journals and stuff have studied this. We know this is a bad thing. And I've mentioned many times on camera before that when you identify people's negative behavior and their suffering, they will defend it to the death in some cases. And a lot of people wanted to defend their use of doom scrolling. So let's start with the first comment. Hey, DT, without the news, I wouldn't know what's really going on. And I got several people that said that they had to doom scroll because if they didn't doom scroll, they wouldn't know what's going on in the world. A very similar comment I got was also, hey DT, if it wasn't for the internet, we'd never know stuff is about to hit the fan, LOL. So yeah, if we never knew what was going on in the world before 1996 when everybody was on the web. Think about that. We've had 5,000 years of human history. And we never knew what the hell was going on until the birth of the internet, like less than 30 years ago, right? That's where we're going. Like, does that answer actually logically, rationally, reasonably, does that make any sense to you? Now, when we go back very far in history, say several centuries, the world gets a little bit disconnected. People that were living, for example, here in the Americas, the Native American people didn't know what the hell was going on in Asia. Asian people didn't know what the hell was going on in Africa, right? But we were very disconnected, but we were disconnected and it didn't matter, right? If you didn't know the other place existed, you didn't worry about it, right? It's not like you weren't missing anything. You didn't know that place was even there to begin with. And in many cases, this was healthy. This was healthy for each of these separated communities because these people focused on their own communities rather than what somebody halfway across the world might or might not be doing, right? People lived in small communities. They knew each other. They knew everybody in their village, their town, right? They knew everybody and they cared for each other because that was the community, right? That's the people they focused on. That's the people when there was strife, when there was conflict, when there was war. Those are the people that they fought for, that they defended, right? They didn't worry about people, again, thousands of miles away that they've never even met. Now, because of TV and because of the internet, now when something happens on the other side of the globe, everyone knows about it, within 10 minutes, right? We know exactly what's going on in this country, that country. We always, especially the negative news stories, if there's some kind of calamity somewhere, we're going to know about it within seconds after it happens. And is that healthy? Is that really healthy? I would argue that is not healthy. That is not healthy because our brains are still, we're similar to our ancestors 5,000 years ago that weren't flooded with all of this negative information about things that we can't control, that we really have no part in, things that are going on very far away from us. Our brains are still wired to live in that existence. So I would say this, again, doom scrolling, this is not healthy for even modern humans. One final comment I want to read about doom scrolling. I got this question here, or a comment. He writes, "Hey DT, I agree. We need to reduce doom scrolling, but I think the opposite is as dangerous when people have no idea what's going on in the world. I know someone who's the sweetest person in the world, but he has no idea January 6th or what the current Gaza or Ukraine conflicts are all about." Okay, so there is a lot to unpack in this rather short comment. I hate to go off on a really political tangent, but my goodness, who cares what other people are aware of and care about? You say you have this friend, this is the sweetest person in the world, and you are concerned because they don't know that January 6th even happened, or that there's a war in Gaza or Ukraine, or what the conflicts are even about. And for some reason, you have a negative reaction to that. You have a negative thought about that person because they're not aware of something you're aware of. How vain and arrogant are you? And it's also very clear in the way you worded this that your mind has been polluted and rotted by politics. You live in that very political social media space. You love fighting the political fight, right? Because everything the wording of this just reeks of politics, because obviously you talk about this sweetest person in the world has no idea about January 6th, Gaza, Ukraine. So you're talking about three issues why did you pick those three issues? Let me guess. They're very political issues that are talked about all the time on mainstream media and social media. That's why you brought those issues up, and particularly from people of your political bent, your political party. They care about those three issues. That's the only reason you brought it up. Are there other things you could have brought up? Other more pressing issues out there? Sure. But that didn't fit the political narrative of the people leading your particular political party that are trying to drive people like you in a certain direction. And now you want to pull this sweetest friend of yours in the world. You want to pull them in that direction because you know what? I've been told I have to care about January 6th, Gaza, and Ukraine. I have to care about it in a certain way. I have to think a certain way about those topics. And I need to make sure all of my friends also know about those topics and they think exactly the same way as me. Again, how vain and arrogant are you? Here's a news flash. Every person on the planet doesn't have to think and care about the same issues as you, and they don't have to feel a certain way about those issues as you. But the way you wrote this, you kind of implied that you do. So I really, you people that have been polluted by politics, please step away from the internet. Have a social media detox and turn off cable news. For a couple of weeks, just put all that aside, have a total technology detox, and then come back and objectively look at how you've been acting. Because if you objectively looked at just the way you wrote this question, if you really objectively looked at it, I think you would be disgusted that you even wrote that. And also, the whole doom scrolling thing, I am really trying to help people because, again, this is not healthy. You demanding others think and act like you, that's not a healthy way to live. You know, I'm not trying to tell you to not do this because it's bad for the people you're trying to talk to. I care about those people too, but I care about you. You feeling like you need to go out and tell other people what to do, what to think, and that you somehow have some control over what other people think. That is not a healthy way to live, because you're going to drive yourself insane thinking that way, because you cannot control what other people think and do. And yes, this whole doom scrolling effect that I've been talking about, it might not be the cause of this sort of warped mindset that you may have, but it damn sure isn't helping the matter. And ultimately, you got to understand that the only reason that you even care about any of those issues you brought up, again, it's all politics. And politics is an extension of doom scrolling. That's all politics is. It's just another form of doom scrolling, because politics is nothing but anger and hate and division. That's all politics is. Politics is designed to divide people and to anger certain groups of people, right? It's designed to have people fight. That's what politics is. That's what doom scrolling makes you feel angry and negative. Again, there's a correlation between doom scrolling and politics, and you have to recognize that that's there. And I know some people are going to say, hey, I didn't ask that question because of politics, DT. I asked that question because I care. I care so much, DT, about people, you know, and trying to stop all the pain and suffering around the world. I asked that question because I care. Well, if you really cared, are those the main topics you really should be asking others about? Like, if you really cared about trying to make a difference in the world and easing pain and suffering, why in the hell, first of all, why in the hell are you asking about January 6th? But then Gaza and Ukraine, if you're an American, which I assume, you know, most of my audience is, why are you worried about those particular things that you have no control of? For example, wars. Country A attacks country B. Country B respond. You have no control over what those countries are doing. We have no say in it. You and me as individuals, we have absolutely no impact on any of those conflicts at all. But you could have asked the sweetest friend of yours, right? You could have asked them, hey, do you know about the 750,000 people in the US right now that are homeless, that, you know, have no shelter, living in tents, living under underpasses, don't know where their next meal is coming from? Think about that. 750,000 people in this country are homeless. Those are people standing right in front of you. You know, you see them every day. If you live in a big city, you walk past them, right? They're people that you can see. You can reach out and touch. People you can smell, right? They're right there. They're not people that you don't know half a world away, right? They're people standing right there that you could make an immediate impact on those people's lives if you wanted to. But politically, that doesn't do anything for you, right? You can't go on Twitter or Facebook and, you know, and tell people, hey, I helped a homeless person today, and you know, all your political friends and allies, you know, championing you, you know, they don't care, right? But if you speak out against the war in Gaza, you know, all of a sudden, oh, you are such a hero for making that tweet, right? But of course, you making that tweet does nothing. You have accomplished nothing by writing meaningless words on a social media app. But if you wanted to make real difference in the world, go help those homeless people, right? What about all the people in the US that have serious drug problems? Do you know that about 80,000 people in the US die of drug overdoses every year here recently because of the fentanyl crisis, right? How about trying to help those people, right? How about even, we don't even have to talk about human beings. How about donate, time and money to animal rights causes, animal shelters, and things like that? You would be surprised how much better you would feel as a human being to actually go and truly help somebody. What you're doing right here, this is not helping anybody, and you know it. You could actually go and donate time, money, really do something in person. Go to a homeless shelter, right? And actually do something, work at a homeless shelter, donate your time, go to an animal shelter and donate your time and do something. Even do something as simple as people that are poor and can barely afford food and clothes. How about this? You've got an extra $50. We all do, right? Go to the supermarket today and spend $50, take $50 and go buy some food, some canned goods, right? Buy various canned goods and maybe some box dinners, that you can get kind of cheap. And $50 will go a long way on that kind of stuff, and load up on a big bag of food and go donate it to your local food bank, right? That'll make a real difference in somebody's life. You want to make a difference, that actually is an actual difference. What you're doing with this political bullshit and doom scrolling on social media, you're not making a difference. You're kidding yourself if you think that makes a difference. Anyway, food for thought. Now, before I go, I need to thank a few special people. I need to thank the producers of this episode. And of course, I'm talking about these guys right here. Matt Steve, 40mm, Cap Caveman, Darloff Lee, Jersey Killer, Mark, Methos, Arion, Paul, Peace Archer, Fedora, Realities for Less, Red Prophet, Roland, War Gentoo, and Ubuntu, and Willie. These guys, they're my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without these guys, this episode of Hey DT would not have been possible. The show's also brought to you by each and every one of these fine ladies and gentlemen as well. All these names you're seeing on the screen right now. These are all my supporters over on Patreon because I don't have a corporate sponsor. I'm sponsored by you guys, the community. If you like my work, want to see more videos about Linux and free and open source software and future episodes of Hey DT, subscribe to DistroTube over on Patreon. Peace, guys.